Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, viewers. It is a fresh new week. It is another Monday. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. My name is Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz, good morning.
Good morning indeed, and welcome to another edition of a Daybreak on Trust Television. We're live in the Federal Capital Territory. I'm Dashan Husseina Usman. Thank you so much for tuning in. Abdulaziz, Abdulaziz, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. You look refreshed, unlike last week where, you had a cold.
Well, last week I just managed to be on the show because I was battling cold and eventually malaria, but well, we thank God, here am I.
It seems to be flu season because almost everyone I know has a cold.
It is.
So it just shows that you need to, take the extra mile to, take care of yourself. Like
exactly.
For us, in broadcast, we cannot afford
to have cold. Exactly.
Just mess up the job. So we need to be extra careful.
It is the season, as you said, and also malaria. A lot of people are complaining about it, and the season,
rainy
season, and. So a lot of things are changing and all that, and it's affecting almost everybody. And everyone else has to be very careful because,
in previous years, by now I would have actually fallen ill.
Wow.
But, I'm strong. My immune has
improved.
My immune system has improved.
We all need to look after ourselves and be our...
Just look at ourselves.
Look at ourselves, that's true. So let's look at the headlines this morning. Bandits abduct Kaduna church. Bandits hit Kaduna churches, gun down 3, abduct many.
Former NFA Secretary General Sani Toro abducted.
Paris Diamond League, Nigeria's Toby Amusan breaks 100-meter hurdle African record.
All right, let's move on to the details of the news. Bandits on Sunday stormed the Maranatha Baptist Church and St. Moses Catholic Church in Rubu Village, Kajuru on Sunday, killing 3 locals in Kaduna State. The victims were identified as Peter Madaki, ward head of Ongwamfada, Elisha Ezekiel, resident of Ongwamfada, and Aliza Mani, youth leader of Rubu. Daily Trust gathered that 2 persons were left injured in the attacks. One, Aniro May, a yet unidentified woman, and an unspecified number of locals were also kidnapped. While confirming the incident, the State Commissioner, Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Aruan, said the attackers started from Ongwamfada and moved into Ongwanturawa before Ongwamakama and then Rubu Village. He explained that the bandits looted shops and carted away some valuables from the villagers.
Former Secretary General of the defunct Nigeria Football Association, NFA, Sani Ahmed Toro, has been abducted by gunmen. He was reportedly abducted last night on Abuja Jos Road, along with a former Golden Eaglet assistant coach, Garba Ilya. Both men were said to be traveling back to Bauchi after attending the wedding of the son of a former NFA president, Alhaji Aminu Maigari, in Abuja on Friday. A football stakeholder in Bauchi State, who is a close friend of the abductees, said those who abducted them were yet to contact their families. Ahmed Sani Toro, a former commissioner of sports in Bauchi State and one-time member of the House of Representatives, was the Secretary General of the then NFA between 1993 to 1999.
And finally, Nigeria's Toby Amusan has broken the African record after clocking 12.41 seconds in the 100-meter women's hurdle. Amusan broke her own record with her 3rd best run of the season at the Diamond League meet in Paris, France on Saturday. During the Paris Diamond League, Amusan blazed to victory with a time that moved her up to 3rd in the world in 2022, only behind world leader Jasmine Camacho Quinn and Alicia Johnson. Amusan is the first Nigerian to win a Diamond League trophy.
Now moving on, candidate of the All Progressives Congress APC in the Ekiti governorship polls, Abiodun Oyebanji, has been declared winner of the Saturday's governorship election in the state, scoring 187,057 votes to defeat Shegun Oni of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, who came second with 82,211 votes in the keenly contested governorship race. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman reports that the Social Democratic Party has rejected the results and threatened to contest it at the election tribunal. The report.
Declaring the results of the Saturday's poll, INEC returning officer Professor Kayode Oyebode says candidate of the major opposition People's Democratic Party PDP, VC Kolawole, also polled 67,457 votes to clinch the third position.
That Abiodun Abayomi Oyebanji of APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared winner and is returned elected.
Meanwhile, the Social Democratic Party SDP has rejected the results of the governorship election, alleging massive voter inducement and orchestrated violence at its strongholds by the ruling party. Speaking exclusively to media trust platforms, agent of the SDP barrister Oseni Ajayi also threatened that his party will approach the tribunal to ensure justice, just as he declined to sign the result sheet. Reacting to the allegations, agent of the ruling APC Kayode Babade dismissed the claims, challenging SDP to provide proof, insisting that the claims were baseless. 16 political parties fielded candidates in the up-season election, which was manned by 17,000 policemen, over 9,000 civil defense corps, and supervised by 4 INEC national commissioners and 8 resident electoral commissioners. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Abiodun Oyebanji, is now the governor-elect of Ekiti State. Appreciating the confidence reposed in him by the people of the state, Oyebanji is promising that his administration will operate an open-door policy so that all citizens will be carried along. Trust TV reporter Habiru Lawal gives us an insight into the mood in the state a day after the elections.
The Ekiti election has a clear winner, Abiodun Oyebanji, who is governor-elect, gathering 187,057 votes, trailed by his Social Democratic Party counterpart, Segun Oni, with 82,211 votes, while the People's Democratic Party governorship candidate, BC Kolawole, polled 67,457 votes. Understandably, there are mixed reactions to the outcome of the elections. The SDP candidate, for instance, has rejected the result and insists that he will not congratulate the winner. There are also unproven allegations that the votes were bought. However, some residents are happy with the result and are insisting that the vote was hit-free.
We worked very hard, but God crowned our efforts, and we thank God for Bao.
It is God that gave us this victory. And Bao in person, his character, his behavior to the people of Ekiti State actually enhanced him this victory. And we thank God because it's a free election, no bloodshed. And
meanwhile, the governor-elect has promised that his administration will continue to uplift the people of the state.
We will work together with you to keep Ekiti working. I thank all other aspirants and their respective political parties for the dignified way they carried out their campaigns and for contributing to the credibility of the process. I will be seeking audience with you all in the coming days.
The Ekiti election was supposed to be a litmus test to adjudge how ready INEC was for the elections next year. It also throws more light on a key factor that must be overcome before the polls: voter apathy. With only 37% of registered voters casting their vote in this election, it is very obvious now that a lot more must be done in the area of voter mobilization. In Ekiti, Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News.
Meanwhile, crisis has started brewing up in the APC chapter, Kebbi State APC chapter, as a result of intensive horse trading and efforts by party stalwarts to take control of the party sequel to the 2023 general elections. This has already led to the decamping of some major stakeholders, such as the former governor of the state and serving Senator Muhammad Adamu Aleru to the opposition PDP. a situation which the opposition claim may weaken the APC at the polls come next year. Correspondent Hamza Galadima Zuru has more on the report.
Kebbi State has for a long time been a peaceful and politically dormant state, even though politicians from the state have played prominent roles on the national political scene. But recently, the political atmosphere has heated up with a series of decamping from the major ruling APC to the PDP, the foremost and biggest opposition party in the state. This according to some of the political heavyweights that cross-carpeted from the APC to the PDP followed unreconciled differences arising from the choice of the party's flag bearer for the 2023 governorship elections.
The bone of contention was actually the conduct of ward congresses that was done at the ward level, at the local government level, and also at the state level. All the party executives that were loyal to either myself or the Senate leader were removed from the list.
Immediately after the decamping of Senator Muhammad Adam Aleru, the Senate Majority Leader Dr. Yahya Abdullahi also announced his decamping to the PDP, hereby vacating his position as the leader of the Senate as he has decamped to the opposition.
I write to inform you of the withdrawal of my membership of the All Progressive Congress APC and consequently resign from my position as the Majority Leader of the Ninth Senate. I came to this decision after a very hard struggle with my conscience and emotions.
However, the governor of Kebbi State, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, while reacting to this development, said although it is not welcoming for anybody to leave the APC, but their decision to leave will not in any way affect the chances of the party at the polls.
APC Kebbi State, by God's grace, is not worried, but we regret that somebody will leave, whoever that person is.
On the other hand, other opposition parties described it as a good development, saying it will further improve their chances to make a good outing at the 2023 polls. The PRP, through its PRO Alhaji Abubakar Dakingari, said the PRP will surely utilize the opportunity to take over government in Kebbi State come 2023.
The public relations officer of the Kebbi APC, Alhaji Isa Asalafi, said the APC in Kebbi State will surely weather the storm and overcome all the crises as it has been doing in the past.
Hamza Galadimo Zuru reporting for Trust TV News from Birnin Kebbi.
One would actually think, with the conventions over and all that, at least, all these internal wranglings would have subsided, drastically.
Well, why would they? It's a matter. It's an issue of interest. So that maybe even you, they now said they are taking away your meal ticket because for these politicians, that's what they take these seats. So like it's struggle for power. So you see, it's happening almost everywhere. Just like in KB, in Kano, also a lot of people have moved here or there and all that.
We have seen that happen a lot. Some would actually, is that the reason why they say politics is a dirty game?
Well, perhaps. And also, as they say again, that in politics, there is only permanent interest, no permanent friends or enemies. Because you see all these people going to align with their long-term rivals and all that, but leaving their former parties, and that's quite interesting. But I don't know, but in places like KB, honestly, it will affect the chances of the APC very well because these are very formidable forces that have been there for long, like Senate leader and the former governor Aleru.
Yeah. Well, we'll actually see how that pans out, in time. All right, so let's move on to more reports. Moving on to crime now. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has foiled attempts by drug traffickers to export methamphetamines to Malaysia and Australia. The NDLEA says it also arrested 2 persons in connections to the attempted illegal export. In this report, Chiamaka Nwafor chronicles more of the strides recorded by the Apex Drug Enforcement Agency to rid the country of the menace in the last week.
According to a statement by the agency's head of media and advocacy, Femi Babafemi parcels of Mporomiri, which is the popular local parlance for the methamphetamine drug, concealed in cornflakes, parks, and body cream containers, were seized by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, at Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Iketa, and the courier company in Lagos. Babafemi informed the two freight agents, Neji Anoma and Etu Barnabas, involved in the bid to export 9 parcels of methamphetamine weighing 1.45 kilograms hidden in packs of cornflakes to Malaysia through the narco export shed of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport on Wednesday, have been arrested. Another consignment of 10 cartons of tramadol, 225 milligram package as Trauma King, containing 500,000 tablets with a total weight of 407 kilograms and an estimated street value of 200 million naira, have been seized during a joint examination with the customs at the NCS warehouse. The consignment, which had arrived Sako import shed since 6 June from India via Ethiopian Airline, was eventually transferred to the NDLEA by customs on Wednesday. On Tuesday, a similar joint examination with customs at the Customs Enforcement Terminal, Tinkan Seaport, Lagos, led to the seizure of 33 parcels of cannabis indica Colorado, weighing 16.5 kilograms. The drug exhibit was received from a 40-foot container carrying 4 vehicles, with the cannabis coming from Montreal, Canada, discovered in 3 of the vehicles. In the same vein, operatives of the Directorate of Operations and General Investigation at the agency attached to a courier company have intercepted a kilogram of methamphetamine concealed in body cream containers heading to Australia. Meanwhile, the drug cartels also suffered losses in their operations across Adamawa, Borno, Kogi, Ogun, Zamfara, and Taraba states, as notorious drug dealers were arrested and several consignments of illegal drugs seized. Chairman, Chief Executive of NDLEA, Brigadier General Muhammad Buba Marwa, retired, commended the officers and men of the various commands of the seizures and arrests of the past week. He encouraged them and their compatriots across their formations to remain vigilant and intensify their offensive action against the drug cartels in all parts of the country.
And this again,
doing a lot, every week, it's something else. Right now, we're seeing, all these drugs being, packaged in cereals and everything.
I just sometimes marvel at the ingenuity of these drug peddlers. They keep devising means. Look at this one, packaging it in a cereal package.
Who would have thought? Yes. So kudos to the NDLEA, by the way.
Exactly, kudos to them. But I don't know. Well, maybe because there's a lot of money in it, but the rate at which this drug peddling is going on is just alarming.
Oh, and people are actually suffering, so a lot of people would actually do whatever it takes, to
well, but
make money.
People should know that, drug addiction is not the solution to our problems. It's just maybe compound them. Okay, let's move on. 2 of the kidnapped victims from Shola quarters in Katsina Metropolis have regained freedom after paying 11 million naira ransom. The abductees are Alaji Tukur Traki and his wife Saadatu Traki. Abdullahi Yamadi met the freed couple at their residence in Katsina and filed in this report.
Though looking hale and hearty, this kidnapped victim describes how rough the road to the kidnapper's den is. He, however, started with his encounter with the terrorists at home before the journey to their den.
Later on, they say, okay, am I ready for them to kill me? Then I asked them, are you going to shoot me at the front or at the back? Choose, the option is for you. Then he would just hold my hand. He said, you don't even fear us. You are talking with us confidently. I said, we are all human beings. So from there, they carry me go outside my house.
The trauma of being forced out of their residence with his wife, leaving his second wife and children behind, readily comes to mind. After trekking for over 50 kilometers to the point where the terrorists kept their motorcycles, they rode to the forest throughout the day, with 3 people on each bike.
Honestly speaking, my colleagues, they carry us there, I pity them. Because the way their relatives are begging them, they are not listening to them. Still, they are under their custody up to now.
How many of them?
They are 4 in number. Three men, 1 woman. And that woman, she has a baby. That baby, I think she's for 5 months. Yes.
Though Turaki and his wife stayed there for only 2 days, he is concerned about the condition of some victims he left behind at the terrorists' hideout. While narrating her ordeal, Turaki's wife, Hajia Saadatu, who is a professional nurse, says she was harassed, beaten, and intimidated by her abductors.
Sai na daga kaina ta window sai na ga su da kayan sojoji a jikinsu da bindiga a rataye. Sai na ce me ta window ne musu magana na ce me ya muku kuke dukan shi. Sai wani ya hasko ni da torchlight.
When I noticed the presence of strange people in our house on that fateful day, I thought they were military officers. While asking why they were beating our child, one of the terrorists slapped me twice and hit me with a gun. It was then that I realized that they were not officers. It was indeed a horrific experience. God forbid.
Wallahi Allah bai bani ikon ma in tsaya in saurare ta ba. Kawai with full confidence ina na fito, ina bude kofar ina fitowa sai na yo wurin ɗakin shi. Ina yowa dan na dauka su biyun su kadai ne. Ban san suna da yawa ba. Ina yowa kwana kawai sai wannan wanda ya haska min fitilan sai ya sake hasko ni sai na ce mallam kana ta hasko ni na gaya maka me yayi muku. Sai kawai naji ban ga wanda ya mare ni kawai naji mare ne from nowhere.
Saadatu, looking emotionally exhausted, disturbed, weak, and tired, called on government to be more proactive in dealing with criminals terrorizing people of Katsina State and the country in general. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Well, what a truly horrific experience it must have been, for them. Yeah, really traumatic as well. All right, so with that, we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, it'll be time for the newspaper review.
But in a situation where you find that a look like this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now it's time for the newspaper review, and we have our guest in the studio already here to analyze the front pages of some of the national dailies. Talking about Nelson Yakubu Omonu. He's a publisher, Summit Post, and he joins us for a detailed review of today's front pages. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Let's quickly begin with today's edition of Daily Trust newspaper, where the major story says more woes as aviation fuel, diesel prices soar. Jet A1 hits 815 per litre, diesel nears 800. Inflation spikes as transport cost rises. Banks, others cut down services. How FG can intervene. Experts. This is a story on page 4 of today's Daily Trust. And on top of the page, Ekiti Governorship Buhari hails Oyebanji's victory. SDP kicks. Story on page 8. Just beside that, another business story saying foreign airlines trapped funds hit $450 million. And below the page, there's a pictorial showing scavengers searching for iron scraps at a demolition site in Apo, Abuja. And below that, the story saying pregnant woman, co-member, 5 others drawn in Bielsa boat crash. And that's the story on page 7. And then below that, on the belt, there are 3 other stories. E-Customs court halts new $3.2 billion project. Story on page 2. And bandits attack Kaduna churches, kill 3, abduct many, on page 7. And lastly, 14% of Nigerians pilgrims airlifted 10 days after commencement of Hajj airlift, story on page 8. So, Mr. Monu, let's begin with the main story. As this says, more woes for Nigerians. And I think the writers somehow explain. What are your thoughts about this hardship caused by increasing rise in the price of diesel as well as aviation fuel?
In fact, that is the sore point we've got into, and Nigeria is not in isolation. It's a global phenomenon because of what is happening in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine. If you check, a good percentage of global oil comes from Russia, and then the energy. And for Nigeria, where the brunt is coming from is we depend on external oil, though we're a major producer of oil, but we don't refine good percentage of what we're using. So we depend on importation, and that is where we're having issues, and it's affecting a whole lot of things. Like businesses are crumbling. Those that are surviving will have to just devise any kind of means to stay afloat. It is a sad one, and I think that if there's anything government can do, and governments around the world are already improvising to see what they can do to still keep businesses, like Britain is already in recession. I just read that before I got into the studio, that it's already Britain, for the first time in 11 years, they are in recession. And back here, even down to household, what do you do with that when companies will have to buy like diesel for 800 naira to be able to power their system, to be able to produce? Then that's why products in the market has just, inflation is sickening. And for ordinary Nigerians, I think we just pray that something is done quickly.
Okay, you said other countries are actually, doing something about it. And we have, a writer here that says how federal government can intervene. How do you think the federal government can actually intervene?
Well, those it will have to continue to be subsidy. There is nothing we can do in the immediate while we are waiting for companies, for refineries like Dangote and the rest of them. It is to continue to be subsidies so that production costs can...
But government is seriously complaining about the subsidy.
That is the point. See, it's neither here nor there. Now, if you're complaining about subsidy and you are not refining this year, so we depend, so a global, whatever happened at the global level affects what happened. We are not in isolation. So we must continue to spend our money in this subsidy to ensure that prices of these products are kept at bay, so that whatever is produced and kept in the market, ordinary Nigerians can afford it. Because the Nigerians are already traumatized by the level of inflation we have now. This is frightening. We've not seen this in a very long time.
Yeah, so as you say, it's quite frightening. But just related to that is the issue of trap funds by foreign airlines. This is also somehow related to this regarding forex crisis.
Yes,
also.
that's right.
What do you think is the way out of this forex crisis? Because it's affecting a whole lot of things.
That's right.
What are your thoughts?
No, if we just have to deal with that, see, it's like a situation we have found ourselves in the hole that we cannot handle in the immediate, because there are a lot of things. We're spending so much to subsidize fuel at the moment. We are spending so much to subsidize. So except the global, we expect that with the crisis in Ukraine, a lot of thinkings are being done by global leaders to see what they can do to get Russia. About 4 days ago, Emmanuel Macron, that is the president of France, said Russia be humiliated out of Ukraine. And I think German sanctions also hinted on that. I think what they are trying to do is to see how they can massage Russia. Because why I want to take this from the global level is that the moment that crisis is solved and more oil can be pushed into the international market, then it will now start cushioning the effect of, back here, because we are not operating in isolation. Like if there's a blockade, Russia has blocked Ukraine, which is a major supplier of wheat around the world, from exporting. And now they have everything stockpiled there, and the price has skyrocketed. So we are not operating, we don't exist in isolation anymore. So whatever happens at global level affects us back here. So depending on when we are able to solve, they are able to solve the problem at that international level. That is when we're going to expect some so-called back here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so can you talk briefly about this particular story on Ekiti governorship elections? Here it says Buhari hails Oyebanji's victory, and SDP is actually kicking against, the victory.
That's right. There will always be, you don't expect politicians to be on the same page. Don't forget, Segun Oni is a former governor. He has tested power before for like 4 years. Now, he knows how sweet it is, and the other man, the PDP man, has never been governor, so he don't know what it tastes like. Depending on two people in the same place, cannot see things the same way, right? Now, the PDP says, yes, I give it to you. You had an upper hand. The SDP say, now, the missing link is, if you calculate the votes of other parties, if they had come together in synergy to stand against the ruling party in the state, that is one thing politicians don't, but because it's a matter of interest, nobody will want to give up his ambition for the other person. If not, if you put the votes of opposition parties together, it would have been enough to stake the 184 thereabouts of the APC scored. But rather, they spread the votes across many candidates, and that gave the APC upper hand. And let me also commend INEC. That is a very good outing. I think in a long while, apart from I think Ondo and Edo also, INEC up their games, and I think there's marginal creativity coming in here. We didn't hear of, I think it's just one person that was killed, though it's regrettable though, but the figures are going down. Incidences of violence is at very low rates in this election. And we'll also talk about vote buying. But then let me weigh in quickly on voter apathy. If you put the whole of the votes together, it's around 300,000. And registered voters in Ekiti is put about over 1 million. Then that is worrisome.
Concerning.
Yes, it calls for concern, because if you have over 1 million people registered to vote, and you have and I'm sure that more people registered shortly before the election, and even possibly collected their PVC. But where are these people? Why are they not interested in voting? Despite a lot depends on who becomes the leader. Now, why are our people not interested in going out to vote? So I think that is a lot of thinkings.
That's very interesting poses. There are very pertinent questions that we would love to explore, but maybe we'll pause the conversation there. And just before we leave the Daily Trust, can you quickly say something about this story coming just maybe like 2 weeks after the very devastating attack in Owo Church? Yesterday there was almost similar, attacks by bandits on churches in Kaduna, where they killed at least three persons and abducted many others.
That's another sad one. That is another sad one. I think also about 4 days ago, there was similar thing in US, but the dimension is in US 2 people were killed in during church attack like that, and I think Nigeria is not in isolation. Nigeria is not the only country involved in this, but back here, I think it's not we can't deal with it differently from kidnapping and the rest of them. I think the whole security architecture should be reviewed, because, and again, you read a story from Katsina about the man that was picked up, and now that he coughed out 11 million, he's back home with his wife, reunited with his family because he has the money. What about those who don't have? Now, what about setting up tribunal when an offense is not punished? Because the people that are being arrested now, we don't keep track of what happened to them after arrest. And that is a motivation for those who want to go into crime. We know times are hard, but there are people who will not take to crime because times are hard. So what is the government doing as in concrete action? See, extraordinary times, requires extraordinary measures. Now, what about setting up tribunal to deal with this? By the time people are being used as scapegoats, not even as scapegoats, by the time they are being meted with justice, quick justice. And I think that some people will have a rethink. Going to people gathered to worship, you just banging on them and start shooting. And I think, are we in state of nature?
All right, let's move on to the next paper, and that's Leadership newspaper. And we have at the top of the page there, terrorists kill 3 worshippers, abduct 46 in Kaduna. We also have Kwankwaso will not be Obi's running mate, says NNPP. Healthcare, patients bear brunt of outages, high diesel cost, says investigation. ISWAP kills 6 commuters, injures 2 in fresh Borno attack. And we also have the lead story here saying SANS CSOs to INEC. You must reject candidates who didn't participate in primaries. And we have writers that says INEC can't promote impunity, illegality, say CSOs. Case of Lawang, Akpabio, clear violation of Electoral Act, says SANS. Machina insists on legal action over Yobe North APC senatorial tickets. Akpabio's name will not be on the ballot, says AID. No report suggests the names were forwarded to us, says INEC. And then we have a story of Ekiti poll. After landslide, Oyebanji promises to work for Ekiti people. More stories coming in. Court halts action on e-customs concession project. TED Fund to release 15 billion naira for National Library project. And then 18 die in Bida Mina road crash. All right, so let's take a look at the story that talks about Kwankwaso will not be Obi's running mate, says NNPP. You know, there are rumors that there would be a merger between the Labour Party and the NNPP, and now they're saying that a lot of people are actually looking forward to, that merger, but now the NNPP is saying no, Kwankwaso won't be a running mate.
Yes. I'm wondering how that marriage is going to work. These are 2 presidential candidates that believe that they both can win. So who is going to be running mate to the other person? So it's just like, but in politics they must continue to talk. But I don't see prospect in that measure. And the scenario that is already developing in next year's February 23 presidential election, we can use, it's going to be like, it may be like what has just happened in Ekiti State during the just concluded governorship election. The opposition are spreading their votes. When Kwankwaso pulled out of PDP. And so within such a short time, for him to be able to put himself together, and what may happen then is that he will annex some votes. He may annex some votes. Then there is Obi effect now that young people are discussing and all that, queuing up to collect. But what is going to do essentially is, in my opinion, is going to spread opposition votes across, then leaving So that is what may likely happen. But for a merger between Labour Party, as personified by Obi and Kwankwaso, I don't see prospects. I don't see anything meaningful coming out of that place, except otherwise one of them decides to, but I don't see that coming.
Now, the headline, the major headline for leadership, speaks about the ropo-ropo, so to say, between politicians trying to snatch. Why are you laughing? That's what is happening, right? Politicians are actually fighting among themselves on who should be on the ticket. Especially, I think the one that really grab attention of the nation is that of Akpabio and then Machina and Lawal in Yobe. What are your thoughts about all these rumbling?
See, I read a post somewhere where someone said remove the I in INEC and was trying to fix something else there. That speaks volume of they should stay. See, this man contested the Machina. He participated in the primaries. He said he went through all the processes and he won. So now, politicians and their game. Now they came that he should give it up for the Senate president. And it is right to say yes or no. And the man said no. This is the ticket I want and I want to fly with it. But some people may be supporting Machina that, look, this guy has stayed around here for too long. Please, let's see what we can do. I think Lawal has been in the National Assembly since 1999. That is he the only person there? There is that thinking that some people, if you see a toad dancing, you just know that the drummer.
It is on something.
So it's like Machina is working in conjunction with some people, but then INEC should not be found to be involved in any illegality because, see, take it or leave it. How they handle that issue, especially that. Nigerians are waiting to see how they handle it. But if they decide to toe the path of political parties, I think INEC will be compromising on their integrity and how people, like we talked about voter apathy just some minutes ago. See, these things work, they don't work in isolation. If an umpire, the man who won the primary said, no, he raised alarm so many times, about 2-3 times like that, that there's an attempt to substitute his name and that APC leadership is trying to write, they have even written to INEC to substitute his name. And he won fair and square. And I think plus or minus, that case may be settled in court. But I think that power that be may want to force Lawal on INEC. But if INEC give into this, I think they stand to lose a lot, especially their credibility. Then for Akpabio and the rest of them, that is the whole games they play. But at least one has backfired. That of Lawal and Machina has come to public light, and I think INEC should redeem. They should redeem themselves.
Mr. Omonu, what do you think will happen, for example, for Lawal to come back to the Senate? Because there are chances that he may not get the Senate presidency again. So why the point? What do you think is he is pushing to get back to the Senate?
So that he will not be out of government completely. Look at it this way. Ike Ekwurema, when he was there as the deputy Senate president for 8 years, and when his party was defeated, and he still came back to the Senate as floor member. So it depends. This being connected to power has a lot of allure, and nobody wants to.
Lawal actually made a hasty decision vying for presidency?
From some insiders said there's a group that wanted to use Lawal as for some permutations. It's politics. even most of those that bought form that they want to contest and all that, you will be surprised that some people bankroll some people to pick up the form, to use them as for permutations. And that is not different from that of Lawa. You know, making arrangement that, okay, take this, I will come back after the presidential primaries and take it, all right? So it was, as a politician, that is, nothing is wrong with the decision to vie for president. It has gone into his into record that he once vied for presidential seats. So it's not different. It's not new in politics. It's just that he played into the hands of possibly a strong man.
That's interesting. So let's move on now to this day newspaper, where at the top of the page it says 14 banks rake in 47 trillion as deposits, disbursed 25 trillion loans in 2021. Zenith Bank, Access, UBA, GT, First Bank, EcoBank maintain industry dominance. Story on page 5. Then Princess Margaret Obebena for burial in Owa Kingdom Delta, August 19 to 20. Below the masthead, Buhari is still waiting for Tinubu's shortlist of running mates. Story on page 8. Atiku mocks Tinubu. Obi says they can't take first and most important decision. The major headline, Buhari to Oyebanji, you must be magnanimous in victory, says success at poll indicative of people's confidence in APC. I won't disappoint Ekiti people, Governor-elect assures. Your election is a popular choice. Kolaole hails Victor. Adamu Tinubu, Lawan Fahimi, Adebayo Sanwo-Olu, others applaud party winner. Well, that's been it on this day. So the stories are pretty much the same, but let's look at this issue of selection of running mate. As they say, Atiku is mocking Tinubu and Peter Obi that they can't take the first and most important decision. What's your take?
That's right. He's making political capital of if you have how many presidential candidates who cannot just reach out and say, that means from the time since you make the decision to vie for that seat, of course you should have some at the back of your mind that if I win, of course I'm going to get someone who is going to run with me. That is to say that they were not actually prepared. So you will not fault a former vice president for mocking them, because he is a contestant, a very strong contender at that. So he must do everything to benefit from their inability to, at a go, choose the running mate. And is also not a good start for them, having to put someone there with the intention that if you come back later to change it. And I think I commend former Vice President Atiku Abubakar for his ability to, PDP has demonstrated that it is organized and has formidable candidates. It took, I think, 24 hours ahead of INEC deadline. PDP was able to, and they are not expecting to change.
But
except
other parties will tell you that there are a lot of permutations and are trying to consider some interest before arriving at a decision, instead of taking a very hasty one.
Then that is why I say Vice President Atiku Abubakar also will have to make a political capital out of their weaknesses. They call it permutation because they will have to defend their actions, but he will have to make some political gains out of their inability to choose. And we hope that somebody will not say, I'm not stepping down.
Okay. All right, so time is actually not on our side. We'll move on to the Guardian newspaper. We have a story at the top of the page, Ekiti elections. Oni vows to challenge outcome. Governor-elect seeks truce. Federal government has 2,000 abandoned underused properties nationwide, says Wike. We also have auto firms, that's the lead story. Auto firms stocks crash as Nigerians spend 4 trillion naira on Tokumbo in 10 years. And we have writers that say stock investors count losses as RT Briscoe SCOA hit 10-year low. Stakeholders blame worsening forex shortage, inflation, weak demands, others. Auto sector on verge of collapse over rising imports, operators warn. Federal government urged to supply industry with credit facilities, tax relief. And there's a pictorial of a 105-year-old Felicia Fayomi, casting her vote. We also have more stories. Group insists Lawan Akpabio, others didn't participate in APC primaries. Terrorist attack, Kaduna Church, kill 3 worshippers, abduct others. Plateau records 2 cases of monkeypox, and then experts urges reversal of power sector privatization for enhanced supply. So let's start with this story that talks about federal government having 2,000 abandoned underused properties nationwide.
So why do we have to go that far, proliferating properties everywhere, if we don't intend to make good use, put them to use? Then, if that is so, why are we not selling off? And we need to finance our budget, and over 2,000 properties underused. Put them up for sale. Clean up the space. Use the money for something for something better. If that figure is true, that means it's regrettable, and it's part of the whole waste that has brought this country to where we are. Policies and projects are not well thought out. Somebody comes in and decides to initiate his own, abandon what you meet. So there is no continuity. That is why you see some of those things proliferated. Somebody will start a project, initiate a project just because of what he can get, not because of the value that can be derived from. And that is why you see everything littered. Then, Usaina, please, I need to talk about the reversal of the past, the call for the reversal. I think leadership is about leaving legacy. There's something about, if I die, let me die. But let the right thing be done. The privatization we have in Nigeria is one of the worst decisions, one of the worst one chance, in quotes, that we have ever entered in this country. And a lot depends on electricity, for crying out loud. If we love our country and that things must work, okay, the people in production, okay, how do you, that's why we are complaining of diesel. If not, if the public power sector is working very well, I think the over-reliance on diesel will be reduced. So if we can't get them to operate at optimal capacity, then let us rethink again. Let us scrap the privatization, then do the right thing. Let's bring in competence. Let me use an example here. When we started with this telecommunication, it was obvious that those who started at the time they were sincere, open bid, foreign company, I don't want to mention name, like came in and pioneered this thing, and effectively it started working and open up the system. Why don't we have a rethink about this power sector privatization? If we need to scrap what has been done, why not? If we need to compensate them, why not? If we need to bring to open bid again, so that even if it's from the end of the earth, that experts has to come, or companies that has the resources to finance, because the privatization here, the interesting thing is that after the privatization, governments continue to give handouts, continue to do all manner of things around companies who claim that they have the competence to manage this thing. Now, it is time for us to have a rethink. And for President Buhari, my appeal is a personal appeal, that he should write his name in gold by being bold. Where he is now, he has nothing too much to lose. He should take that decision and take it, even if it's the last decision he's going to take before he leaves office, so that posterity will record him that he took the right decision by scrapping this, God knows, privatization. so that the right thing will be done. People with companies with capital will come in. We don't have to spend too much. Government will only create enabling environment for them, and they give us light. No matter what we are paying, as long as there's light, it will force down prices of commodities. There will no longer, even if there's going to be need for diesel, I think it will be reduced drastically.
Someone that's a very passionate take, and of course the issue of Nigeria's power problem, intractable power problem, is one that evokes emotions because it's one that affects everyone.
Yes,
let's look at our final paper this morning, The Punch. The major headline says APC PDP clash over vote buying on scam mulls legal action. The story has riders. PDP came distant third, desperate to bring back Reunions regime, says APC. APC pauperized Nigerians. Electorate find it difficult to make rational decisions. PDP. Election fraud with violence, we will challenge it at tribunals, SDP agent. Then with the pictorials, there is a story just below it. Tinubu returns to Lagos, six massive LG votes, hoodlums attack convoys. Jam registrar charges politicians buying 100 million nomination forms, story on page 16. Kidnappers demand 150 million for ex-NFF officers abducted after Abuja wedding. Story on page 5 and 6. Well, so these are some of the stories on the front page of The Punch. But let me seek your maybe final thoughts on this issue of debt servicing. You know, we spoke largely about the economy, the oil prices and all that, but then this debt servicing that the DMO is saying it hits 896 billion in 3 months. Where do we go from here?
So there was a prediction recently by IMF at the World Bank that in next year Nigeria may use almost 90% of its revenue from oil to service debt. That is already problem in the making. I think that we have borrowed too much, and borrowing is not bad entirely in running of government because it helps to reflate the economy. It helps to, but whatever, if you are borrowing, you must not borrow for consumption. But what are we borrowing for?
Okay, well, we're so sorry, we have to wrap up here. Our time is not on our side. Thank you so much, Nelson Yakubu Omonu, publisher, Summit Post, for joining us on Daybreak today.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick breather and we'll be back at the top of the hour.
But in a situation where you find that a look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Jama'a ga wata muhimmiyar sanarwa, hukumar raya birnin tarayya Abuja da haɗin gwiwar dukkanin harɗawa shugabannin rigage na Fulani da ƙungiyar Miyatta Allah reshen birnin tarayya Abuja dukkaninsu suna bayyana damuwarsu akan yadda waɗansu mutane suke sakin shanu suna kiwo sakaka a birnin tarayya Abuja. Don haka hukumar raya birnin tarayya Abuja da ta kare muhalli ta birnin suna sanar da dukkanin al'umma tare da gargaɗi akan cewa an hana kiwo na shanu da sauran dabbobi da tsuntsaye tsuntsaye a cikin birnin domin suna haddasa ɓata muhalli da kuma cunkoson ababen hawa a cikin wannan birni. Saboda haka duk wanda aka samu ya karya wannan doka zai fuskanci hukunci, kasancewar akwai gurin da hukumar raya birnin tarayya Abuja ta ware domin kiwo a cikinsu. Don haka tabbatar ka bi doka ka kuma haɗa hannu da hukumar raya birnin tarayya Abuja domin tabbatar da tsaftar wannan birni. Wannan sako ne daga hukumar tsaftace muhalli ta birnin tarayya Abuja.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve their sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
All right, welcome back. It is still Daybreak on Trust TV, and I'm Dashan Hussein Usman. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for being with us. I'm Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz, good morning.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the highlights. Bandits hit Kaduna Church, gunned down 3.
I beg your pardon. Former NFF Secretary General Sani Toro abducted.
Paris Diamond League, Nigeria's Toby Amuson breaks 100-meter hurdle African record.
Now the story is in full. Bandits on Sunday stormed the Maranatha Baptist Church and St. Moses Catholic Church in Rubu Village, Kajuru, killing 3 locals in Kaduna State. The victims were identified as Peter Madaki, wardhead of Angwam Fada, Elisha Iskel, resident of Angwam Fada, and Ali Zamani, youth leader in Rubu. The Litros gathered that 2 persons were left injured in the attacks. One, Aniro Mai, and a yet-to-be-identified woman and an unspecified number of locals were also kidnapped. While confirming the incident, the State Commissioner for Internal Security and Homes Affairs, Samuel Arwan, said the attackers started from Angwan Fada and moved into Angwan Turawa before Angwan Makama and then Rubu village. He explained that the bandits looted shops and carted away some valuables from the villages.
All right, moving on. A former Secretary General of the then Nigeria Football Association, Honorable Ahmed Sani Toro, has been abducted by gunmen. He was reportedly abducted last night on Abuja Jos Road along with a former Golden Eaglets assistant coach Garba Ilia. Both men were said to be traveling back to Bauchi after attending the wedding of the son of a former NFF president, Alhaji Aminu Megari, in Abuja on Friday. A football stakeholder in Bauchi State, who is a close friend of the abductees, said those who abducted them were yet to contact their families. Ahmed Sani Toro, former Commissioner of Sports in Bauchi State and one-time member of the House of Representatives, was the Secretary General of the then NFA between 1993 to 1999.
In sports, Nigeria's Toby Amusan has broken the African record after clocking 12.41 seconds in the 100-meter women's hurdle. Amusan broke her own record with her 3rd best run of the season at the Diamond League meet in Paris, France on Saturday. During the Paris Diamond League, Amusan blazed to victory with a time 12 minutes 41 seconds that moved her up to 3rd in the world in 2022, only behind leader Jasmine Camacho Queen and Elisha Johnson. Amusan is the first Nigerian to win a Diamond League trophy.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to more reports. Candidates of the All Progressives Congress APC in the Ekiti governorship polls, Abiodun Oyebanji has been declared winner of the Saturday's election, having scored 187,057 votes to defeat Shegun Oni of the Social Democratic Party, who came second with 82,211 votes in the keenly contested governorship race. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman reports that the Social Democratic Party has rejected the results and threatened to contest it at the election tribunal. All right, moving on. Crisis has started brewing up in the Kebbi State APC as a result of intensive horse trading and efforts by party stalwarts to take control of the party sequel to the 2023 general elections. This has already led to the decamping of some major stakeholders, such as the former governor of the state and serving Senator Muhammadu Adamu Alero, to the opposition party, PDP, a situation which the opposition claim may weaken the APC at the polls come 2023. Correspondent Hamza Galadi Mazuru has more on this report.
Kebbi State has for a long time been a peaceful and politically dormant state, even though politicians from the state have played prominent roles on the national political scene. But recently, the political atmosphere has heated up with a series of decamping from the major ruling APC to the PDP, the foremost and biggest opposition party in the state. This according to some of the political heavyweights that cross-carpeted from the APC to the PDP followed unreconciled differences arising from the choice of the party's flag bearer for the 2023 governorship elections.
The bone of contention was actually the conduct of ward congresses that was done at the ward level, at the local government level, and also at the state level. All the party executives that were loyal to either myself or the Senate leader were removed from the list.
Immediately after the decamping of Senator Muhammadu Adamu Alero, the Senate Majority Leader Dr. Yahya Abdullahi also announced his decamping to the PDP, hereby vacating his position as the leader of the Senate as he has decamped to the opposition.
I write to inform you of the withdrawal of my membership of the All Progressives Congress APC and consequently resign from opposition as the majority leader of the Ninth Senate. I came to this decision after a very hard struggle with my conscience and emotions.
However, the governor of Kebbi State, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, while reacting to this development, said although it is not welcoming for anybody to leave the APC, but their decision to leave will not in any way affect the chances of the party at the polls.
APC Kebbi State, by God's grace, is not worried, but we regret that somebody will leave, whoever that person is.
On the other hand, other opposition parties described it as a good development, saying it will further improve their chances to make a good outing at the 2023 polls. The PRP, through its PRO Alhaji Abubakar Dakingari, said the PRP will surely utilize the opportunity to take over government in Kebbi State come 2023.
The public relations officer of the Kebbi APC, Alhaji Isa Asalafi, said the APC in Kebbi State will surely weather the storm and overcome all the crises as it has been doing in the past.
Hamza Galadi Mazur reporting for Trust TV News from Birnin Kebbi.
Still on, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has foiled attempts by drug traffickers to export methamphetamine to Malaysia and Australia. The NDLEA says it also arrested 2 persons in connection to the attempted illegal export. In this report, Chiamaka Nwafo chronicles more of these strides recorded by the Apex Drug Enforcement Agency to rid the country of the menace in the last week. The report.
According to a statement by the agency's head of media and advocacy, Femi Babafemi, parcels of Miri, which is the popular local parlance for the methamphetamine drug, concealed in conflicts, parks, and body cream containers, were seized by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, at Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Iketa, and the courier company in Lagos. Babafemi informed the 2 freight agents, Neji Anoma and Etu Barnabas, involved in the bid to export 9 parcels of methamphetamine weighing 1.45 kilograms hidden in parks of conflicts to Malaysia through the narco export shed of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport on Wednesday, have been arrested. Another consignment of 10 cartons of tramadol, 225 milligram package as Trauma King, containing 500,000 tablets with a total weight of 407 kilograms and an estimated street value of 200 million naira, have been seized during a joint examination with the customs at the NCS warehouse. The consignment, which had arrived Saka import shed since 6 June from India via Ethiopian airline, was eventually transferred to the NDLEA by customs on Wednesday. On Tuesday, a similar joint examination with customs at the Customs Enforcement Terminal, Tinkan Seaport, Lagos, led to the seizure of 33 parcels of cannabis indica Colorado, weighing 16.5 kilograms. The drug exhibit was received from a 40-foot container carrying 4 vehicles, with the cannabis coming from Montreal, Canada, discovered in 3 of the vehicles. In the same vein, operatives of the Directorate of Operations and General Investigation at the agency attached to a courier company have intercepted a kilogram of methamphetamine concealed in body cream containers heading to Australia. Meanwhile, the drug cartels also suffered losses in their operations across Adamawa, Borno, Kogi, Ogun, Zamfara, and Taraba states, as notorious drug dealers were arrested and several consignments of illegal drugs seized. Chairman, Chief Executive of NDLEA, Brigadier General Muhammad Buba Marwa, retired, commended the officers and men of the various commands of the seizures and arrests of the past week. He encouraged them and their compatriots across their formations to remain vigilant and intensify their offensive action against the drug cartels in all parts of the country.
2 of the kidnapped victims from Shola quarters in Katsina metropolis have regained freedom after paying 11 million naira as ransom. The abductees are Alhaji Tukur Turaki and his wife Saadatu Turaki. Abdullahi Yamadi met the freed couple at their residence in Katsina and put together this report.
Though looking hale and hearty, this kidnapped victim describes how rough the road to the kidnappers' den is. He, however, started with his encounter with the terrorists at home before the journey to their den.
Later on, they say, okay, am I ready for them to kill me? Then I ask them, are you going to shoot me at the front or at the back? Choose, the option is for you. Then he would just hold my hand. He said, you don't even fear us. You are talking with us confidently. I said, we are all human beings. So from there, they carry me go outside my house.
The trauma of being forced out of their residence with his wife, leaving his second wife and children behind, readily comes to mind. After trekking for over 50 kilometers to the point where the terrorists kept their motorcycles, they rode to the forest throughout the day with 3 people on each bike.
Honestly speaking, my colleagues, they carry us there, I pity them. Because the way their relatives are begging them, they are not listening to them. Still, they are under their custody up to now.
How many of them?
They are 4 in number. Okay. 3 men, 1 woman. And that woman, she has a baby. That baby, I think she's for 5 months. Yes.
Though Turaki and his wife stayed there for only 2 days, he is concerned about the condition of some victims he left behind at the terrorists' hideout. While narrating her ordeal, Turaki's wife, Hajia Saadatu, who is a professional nurse, says she was harassed, beaten, and intimidated by her abductors.
Sai na daga kaina ta window sai na ga su da kayan sojoji a jikinsu da bindiga a rataye. Sai na ce me ta window ne musu magana, na ce me ya muku kuke dukan shi? Sai wani ya hasko ni da torchlight.
When I noticed the presence of strange people in our house on that fateful day, I thought they were military officers. While asking why they were beating our child, one of the terrorists slapped me twice and hit me with a gun. It was then that I realized that they were not officers. It was indeed a horrific experience. God forbid.
Kar ki fita tana ce min kar ki fita ni wallahi Allah bai bani ikon ma in tsaya in saurare ta ba. Kawai with full confidence ina na fito, ina bude kofar ina fitowa sai na yo wurin ɗakin shi. Ina yowa dan na dauka su biyun su kadai ne. Ban san suna da yawa ba. Ina yowa kwana kawai sai wannan wanda ya haska min fitilan sai ya sake hasko ni sai na ce mallam kana ta hasko ni na gaya maka me yayi muku. Sai kawai naji ban ga wanda ya mare ni kawai naji mari ne from nowhere.
Saadatu, looking emotionally exhausted, disturbed, weak, and tired, called on government to be more proactive in dealing with criminals terrorizing people of Katsina State and the country in general. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, in the Ekiti governorship polls, Abiodun Oyebanji, has been declared winner of the Saturday's election, having scored 187,057 votes to defeat Shegun Oni of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, who came second with 82,211 votes in the keenly contested governorship race. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman report that the Social Democratic Party has rejected the results and threatened to contest it at the tribunal. The report.
Declaring the results of the Saturday's poll, INEC returning officer Professor Kayode Webode says candidate of the major opposition People's Democratic Party PDP, VC Kolaole, also polled 67,457 votes to clinch the third position.
That Abiodun Abayomi Oyebanji of APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared winner and is returned elected.
Meanwhile, the Social Democratic Party SDP has rejected the results of the governorship election, alleging massive voter inducement and orchestrated violence at the strongholds by the ruling party. Speaking exclusively to media trust platforms, agent of the SDP barrister Oseni Ajayi also threatened that his party will approach the tribunal to ensure justice, just as he declined to sign the result sheet. Reacting to the allegations, agent of the ruling APC Kayode Babade dismissed the claims, challenging SDP to provide proof, insisting that the claims were baseless. 16 political parties fielded candidates in the up-season election, which was manned by 17,000 policemen, over 9,000 civil defense corps, and supervised by 4 INEC national commissioners and 8 resident electoral commissioners. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, we have joining us in the studio now, member Technical Network and Advocacy Group, Lux Terra Leadership Foundation, Mr. Henry Ijoma, to help us look at the takeaway from the just concluded elections in Ekiti State. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
On the show.
Thank you for having me.
And then we also expect, we'll be expecting Daily Trust Bureau Chief South, Abiodun Alade, who was the team lead in Ekiti, to join us via phone from Lagos. But for now, let's focus on Mr. Ijoma here. All right, so what's your takeaway on the elections that happened in Ekiti on Saturday?
Well, first is to say congratulations to all of us
that we had a successful election in Ekiti. With the political developments all around the country, you will expect that Ekiti would present some kind of glimpse into what is going to happen in 2023. And we are happy that the elections held. Very little technical issues here and there. The complaints not minding. I think generally the elections were quite successful, and we should be optimistic that this presents some array of hope for us that the coming elections in 2023 will be something to cheer.
Okay, so there are issues that, from different perspectives. Of course, there have been recommendations for INEC, but there are other people who raise concerns about some of the conduct of the politicians or the conduct of the election in general. What is your own assessment of the election in sum?
Well, I think relatively we will say the elections were good. On the part of INEC, I think INEC did exceptionally well. Most of the complaints that we have about the election will now have to do much more with the voters. There were serious issues of vote buying in Ekiti, and that is not INEC's fault in any way. It is now for them to address the issue with the number of reports they already have on ground, and we see that SERAP had already called them to begin prosecution of those who had been found wanting in that respect. I think generally when we look at the conduct from the perspective of INEC, they are scaling up their work effectively. INEC is doing very well. The elections in Ekiti had shown that we can get better with each passing day. What is now left for us is how do we get our people who are participants in the elections, both those who are vying for position and those who are voting, to understand that this is a process that reflects who we are, our image as a country. So what we do with the elections shows relatively well what people should perceive Nigerians to be. So somebody goes for an election to choose for yourself who you want to lead you, and all you do is to stand in the line waiting for somebody to hand you some money before you vote. That tells you the level of, do I call it political illiteracy, that needs to be addressed,
Okay. Now, still talking about vote buying, the CDD, that Center for Democracy and Development, they said its field observers documented 41 instances of vote buying and selling at polling units across 6 local government areas during the elections. And of course, there were trending viral videos of, vote buying, online. Well, what does this mean for democracy? And do we see this particular trend ending soon, especially now that the 2023 elections, is on the way?
Okay, so it's going to get a little bad, a little worse than it is now. Prior to this time, the issues of vote buying was not something that was very open. We had that at some point, and it looked like there's an increase. And that has to do with the psychology of conversations. The more people know about something, the more they will want to try it. So it's going to get to a point where it will now begin to decline. But in the immediate, you are going to see this repeat itself in many more elections, because there are some who are going to feel, oh, so in Ekiti they gave people money, this is our own time, sure. They will want to get their own money during other elections. But we are going to see that surge a little until it gets to the point where people get tired of this phenomenon and move away from it. The flip side will be that we up the discussion around this thing and let people see the ills. It baffles me that up till this time, where the challenge of the country, the challenges we face on a daily basis have gone so high. I understand the point that a lot of people are living seriously below the poverty line, and so people are desperate for money. But lots of the people who are collecting this money are not actually the most the vulnerable amongst us. There are some persons who are enlightened, who can afford that amount of money that has been paid to them, but they feel entitled. So these are the kind of discussions we should be bringing up, especially political parties, even though most of them are beneficiaries of this whole vote buying thing. But those who are prepared to make Nigeria work must constantly disabuse the minds of voters that this is not trade, it's not barter.
So what should the different stakeholders do to checkmate this issue of vote buying that you say we are going to continue to witness it in the immediate?
Okay, so well, commendable that the EFCC, for instance, was on ground in Ekiti because they monitored this trend. So they got reports, got tip-offs from media people, and they followed some of those reports. So that's one action that needs to be seen in subsequent elections. Then, of course, the police needs to do more. There was a particular report in one of the newspapers where someone reported that, oh, look, some policemen were standing beside the people who were paying money. So the police needs to do more, you know. We all need to. So a lot of times we hear that elections were compromised, elections were compromised. I am of the opinion that most times elections are really not compromised. What is compromised is the integrity of the individuals who participate in the process. So whether they be the contestants, the voters, or the law enforcement agencies, or the staff and people who are in charge of the conduct of the election. So the integrity of the Nigerians or individuals who stood on the line and decided to take money or snapped their ballot paper to go after they have voted to show and collect money is something we need to continuously talk about. And all of us, at whatever level, need to discuss the issue of honesty as something very critical in our national development. Because you see that all through our checkered challenges in the country, the number one ingredient that defines all the issues we have is the lack of honesty. Whether it be the humongous corruption you see, or to this level where we have seen people take money for elections, it is actually honesty of the individuals that is lacking.
Okay, now there are actually reports of high voter turnout. Now, would you say Nigerians are actually now aware of their power to exercise their franchise?
Yes, I think the awareness has reached a level where many people are now enthusiastic about participating in the elections, especially with the assurance that people's votes really will now count. But when we say high voters turnout, we are saying this relative to what has happened in previous elections. Otherwise, in the case of Ekiti, for instance, if you look at the number of registered voters against the number of votes cast, then I think there is still a huge gap. We have about 750,000 voters in Ekiti. The total votes cast is about 360,000. So you see the huge margin that is left. So we're almost 400,000 registered voters who didn't turn out. You know, so, but we are beginning to see some level of progress, you know, compared to previous elections where you see very huge gap. This gap is still something remarkable, but we must now begin to assure people, especially seeing, and this is something that we must take away, that for politicians to spend their hard-earned money to go through the kind of rigor and details that they took to get onto those polling units, to share money to individuals so that they can vote for them, should reassure Nigerians that these guys realize that our votes really count. Nobody will give you money to go and vote for them if they consider that your vote will not count. So Nigerians must see that this is true, that your votes can actually count. You know, INEC is doing all it can to make sure that the processes are fair, you know, and transparent enough that people can have confidence in it. The vote buying thing brings to the table the fact that actually our votes are counting. So those who had been very cynical about the electoral process that, oh, well, why should I vote? You know, this is now the time for you to get on board and vote. So we are hoping that the security situation is helping. We will see more voter turnout in subsequent elections.
So still on voter turnout, looking at Anambra, at Ekiti, what does this portend for our democracy? You know, that fewer people, you know, select leaders for everyone.
Well, like they say that democracy is government of the people, by the people. What this means for us, looking at the margin, so for instance, in Ekiti, we have fewer than the number of persons who were registered electing our leader. What it means is that those who are really willing to change the fortune of this country have an opportunity to explore the population that has not been participating in elections. But democracy is a process, all right? And we have not gone so far in it. We are hoping that we'll continue to improve. We are growing as a country. Our processes are improving. Just like she had mentioned, we see a little bit of improvement in the turnout. for me, it is something to be a little more optimistic about, that we see our growth towards a better form and practice of democracy.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Harry. We'll come back to you, but before then, let's join our Bureau Chief in Lagos, Abiodun Alade, who led our team to report the election at the weekend. Mr. Alade, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Abulatif.
Quickly, what's your, as somebody who was on ground in Ekiti, how did you see the conduct of the election?
Well, the conduct of the election was generally peaceful. I must commend the security formation. They dominated the entire area. So we didn't have this incidence of, or we didn't have so many reports of ballot box snatching, thuggery, and co. Because from like a week ahead of this election, we have good security personnel on ground, the military, the police, civil defense, DSS, and they engage in a lot of show of force, to actually deter those people that would have wanted to do anything untoward. That was good. On the part of INEC as well, it was also good, especially with the deployment of beavers, which I must commend. Now people know that you cannot sit down somewhere and write figures without people voting. Then the turnout of the electorate was okay, to some level when you compare with the previous one. But I still believe that we need to encourage more people to come out to vote. People need to know that it is their duties to actually vote. And I believe that the more we do this, the better for us as a country. Now, on the part of the politicians, I think that this is where we have the major issue. The incidence of vote buying has been analyzed, over and over again. I think daily politicians are coming up with new ways of buying votes, and this is why I think the media, the CSO, INEC, and others stakeholders need to focus on how do we stop politicians from buying people votes. How do we ensure that we have a true secret ballot system where I can go and cast my vote and you will not know who I voted for? But in this incidence of vote and see, vote buying will continue. So INEC and the CSO need to go back, that we need to ensure that this is truly a secret ballot system of voting. And I believe once we're able to do that, we are going to be able to reduce this incidence of vote buying.
Okay, Mr. Alade, we've actually spoken about, high voter turnout, and you talked about, the election being, mostly peaceful. But would you say it was free and fair?
Well, that is relative. Free and fair in the sense that people were allowed to vote. Nobody stopped anybody from voting. Nobody was able to. We only have incidents of ballot box snatching in about 2 or 3 polling units. So I think to that level, we can say it was free and fair. But then, were people induced? Were people influenced? Were people made to vote for maybe somebody they would not have voted for? I think yes, to that level, we can say no, it was not fair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Alade, for being with us this morning. We join you later, maybe when another opportunity brings itself. Thank you very much. We'll continue the discussion in the studio with Mr. Ijoma. So, say you, in the final analysis, what are your takeaways from the Ekiti election going into the 2023 general election?
Okay, first will be on INEC to review, have a thorough and sincere review of their process, especially the manpower needed for the work. Review it thoroughly and see areas where there are gaps and make improvements for the subsequent elections. Then secondly, your correspondent just reported that the security agencies were well on ground. This is an off-cycle election, just one state with a very little population. In 2023, for instance, we're going to have elections all over the country. Will we have the same manpower from the security forces to actively and adequately police the entire country during the elections. So that's something to look at critically. The other part will be on the voters, that we are hoping to make Nigeria better by every single action that we take. So during the presidential primaries, one of the contestants at the APC primaries said, you pray every day that you want Nigeria to be better. The vote you cast carries the answer to your prayer. So you can decide which way you want the country to go by the action of voting. So if we want to see a better country, we, in ourselves as voters, must decide to do the right thing. You will not expect that you compromise during the electoral process and expect that the country will be better just like that. Every action, we need to see the link between the little things that we do in our individual corners with what the country becomes eventually. So on the part of the voters, we need people to be sincere and vote their conscience. It is true that it is not all your candidates, your preferred candidate must not win, but that is the essence of democracy, that people contest for power. Different interests, different ideas, different policies, different manifestos and campaign promises. Decide which one you want to vote for, whether the person wins or not. That is the beauty of democracy. I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, why should I vote for that person? He won't win. Do we actually forget that politics, elections is a game of numbers? So somebody will not win because he did not have the number that is required to win. But if more people vote for that same person who you think will not win, eventually the person will emerge. So Nigerians need to understand this. And for the civil societies who are monitoring the elections, we have to continue to raise the issues and see them through. Because a lot of these issues are raised about the conduct of the election, but obviously there are probably no follow-ups to see that some of these issues are resolved.
All right, so now INEC, according to INEC, 8,888 votes were actually voided. Yeah. And this is, mainly because the ballots were not done according to voting requirements. Now, we've talked about, high voter turnout, but what do you think INEC can actually do to improve on voter education? Yeah, especially, in rural areas.
Yeah, it's, well, but not only in rural areas. It will shock you to realize that in the APC presidential primaries, they were voided votes. In the APC presidential primaries, where you had delegates that were selected to participate. So you will expect that at that level, the level of political literacy, if I use that word, was high. But people still voted wrongly, So when you now trickle it down to the fact that you are going to have more persons who are not properly educated come to vote, you expect to see what you saw in Ekiti. It is not left to INEC alone. INEC is doing so much. We must commend them. Truth is that they own the process, so they must be the ones to lead the enlightenment of voters. But we must now all be part of it, especially in our little corners. Every individual who understands the process, who knows it, must find one person to tell exactly how to vote. So as we build up to the general elections, in small corners, in the palaces, in the village squares and all that, the discussion about how to properly vote will not have to happen.
Okay, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with this conversation, looking at other dimensions of the election.
Times have passed, and with it so many things that once were our visual delights. Technological advancement has brought about tremendous changes in the way and manner media deliver content to its audience.
As it continues to reposition itself to serve you much better, Media Trust Limited is rebranding its logo and visual identity to reflect our current vision and futuristic drive.
We have spread our tentacles beyond the pages of the newspaper to the digital space. The new logos and visual identities reflect the new scope of our multimedia reach.
Even with this development, however, we will continue to remain with you as we have always remained, committed to our founding philosophy, which is based on trust, integrity, openness, and courage.
The new logo, which is a marriage of a revolving globe and a mobile device, signifies the unlimited reach of our content on the digital space.
We are always the backbone of operations as we do our best to deliver content that suits your needs.
When you see a new trust title or platform in the next few days, therefore, do not be alarmed.
We remain committed to you and will continue to serve you through fair and responsible journalism.
Every patriotic Nigerian should hear this. Any politician who means well for the people will never allow themselves or their supporters to engage in any violent, destructive activities. No politician who truly wants to serve the people and develop the nation will encourage his followers to destroy properties or take human lives before, during, or after the elections. The Nigerian public must watch out for these traits and isolate any politician who encourages supporters to engage in violence. No genuine politician or patriot will cause trouble and seek to destroy the very society which they aspire to lead or develop. Politicians who have the good of the people at heart will not allow themselves or their followers to engage in violence, destruction of properties, and then taking of lives. Be vigilant. By their words you shall know them. Shun violence. Stay away from politicians who want you to do so. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NORA.
Welcome back, and it's been Daybreak on Trust TV, if you are just joining us. And we've been talking to Mr. Harry Ijoma, member Technical Network and Advocacy Group Luxterra Leadership Foundation, on the outcome of the Ekiti governorship election. Mr. Ijoma, if I ask, the issue of the third force that has been in the political cycle for a while, leading up to the 2023 election, has somehow played out in Ekiti. How does the result of the Ekiti governorship election portend, or what does it tell us about the viability of a third force away from the APC and the PDP?
Well, the truth is, there's never been any doubt that a third force can, change the narrative in any given situation. What we have had over time are people who had claimed to be a third force but had not put in all the energy and resources that is required to upstage those who have been active in the game. To see SDP, for instance, emerge, second in number in terms of total number of votes received, displacing PDP in Ekiti, it's reassuring for those who feel that, oh, because I'm coming from a party that is not APC or PDP, then I don't stand a chance. Like I mentioned earlier, this is about numbers. So if you're able to mobilize enough, if you're able to convince people and you get the numbers, then you can upstage those who have been very active. We saw that happen when APC, for instance, won the election, the presidential election, against all odds, you know, winning PDP that had been in power for several years. You know, so it is commendable that we see people who are aggregating themselves, thinking of how to make Nigeria better. The issue of the third force is welcome. If they must eventually succeed, the resources, the time, the energy, and the commitment to make this happen is what is required.
Okay, now there was actually a statement I actually saw on this particular, win, saying that Oyebanji's victory has set a record in the state's years-long political history, in the sense that since Nigeria returned to democracy in 1999, the southwest state, that's Ekiti, has not retained a ruling party.
Yeah.
Share your thoughts on that.
Well, even me yesterday, I felt like, wow, Ekiti. This was a jinx that needed to be broken. You know, since the return to democracy, it has been some kind of tale, where nobody, had succeeded. Even the governor that is leaving did not succeed in staying up the 2 terms at the same time. He had to leave and come back. The same thing we saw with Fayoshe, who was impeached at some point, had to come back. Shegun Oni of SDP, at some point was the governor of the state as well, who did not even stay through the complete term. So Ekiti had seen instances of disruption.
Tumultuous.
Yes, disruption, acting governors, administrators, all through since 1999 till now. So this is the first time where a sitting governor is handing over to someone who is elected on the same platform like him. Well, let's hope that this shows that he had done well in Ekiti. If that confirms to us that this is a vote of confidence that the administration did very well, then it now challenges all those who want to contest for that position subsequently that to come on board, you have to show clearly what you have to do differently.
Okay. So let's look at the performance of these parties by according to the numbers, as you said. The APC came first, and with the APC came first, then PDP, and then the SDP, and then as you can see on the screen, the PDP and SDP almost tallied in so many places before SDP got some opportunity in some local governments and then overshoot the PDP. And then leading to that dramatic second position. But then back to my first question regarding the place of the third force. How do you see this being reflected? Do you actually have confidence that this can be reflected in the presidential election in February?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, in fact, you even have more opportunities in the presidential election for the third force to make their mark. Ekiti, it's one state. And you could see that, to some extent, the people share the same sentiments. All right? But when you now move out to different states, the sentiments will be different. So the kind of sentiment the people from one local government have will not be exactly the same with the sentiment you find in Lagos, in Abuja, in Delta. So the third force has an opportunity to make a more serious mark in the presidential election than they did in the small state called Ekiti, because you will find people of varying interests that need to be explored, to make your mark.
But people say that the third force, as they are now, for example, whether it is the SDP or the Labour Party or the NNPP, do not have the requisite structure, nationwide structure to actually galvanize enough support to win the presidency. Don't you think that will be a challenge?
If you look at it from some perspective, yes. So just yesterday, I had a very casual conversation with some friends, and someone was insisting on the candidate he needed to vote for the presidential elections, and said, well, he preferred a particular candidate, but he doesn't have any structure. So he will vote for those who already have structure. So my question to him was, do you want to vote for this candidate just because he has a structure, or you want to vote for someone because you have confidence in the person? So I will need you to explain for me, what does this structure do, in essence? And he tried to explain. And his explanation was that, oh, so in some remote places, you will need people to fight for you. You know, that if you don't have a structure, when they snatch ballot boxes, what will you do? And all that. And I said, oh, no. We cannot continue to think of our elections in such crooked manner that will sustain this toggery, you know, in elections. We expect that elections should be free and fair. The elections should be conducted the way it should be conducted. And now this depends seriously on the individuals, the human beings who participate in the elections. So if all Nigerians decide that, well, I'm never going to snatch any ballot box for any politician, no ballot boxes will be snatched. So the point I'm trying to make will now be that you do not necessarily need a structure to win elections if you can convince people to vote for you. The person who needs a structure is INEC that needs to deliver on the process. What we need is for people to walk down, pick up their ballot paper, and vote. You don't need a huge structure to get that done. What you need structures for maybe will be to cascade your campaign to all levels. And there are different ways to do it, and people can do it without necessarily building up humongous structures. You know, create enough sensitization and awareness, and if people are convinced about what you are bringing to the table, they will vote for you, irrespective of the fact that you have a structure in that state or not.
Okay, so what do you think the APC did differently to actually secure the win?
Well, I would think that it's probably the style of leadership of the outgoing governor. I think he was very compassionate. He was always on ground, and he made the people feel, you know, a sense of belonging in his government. I think much could be attributed to that fact that he was available and showed the people that their government can work for them. So a lot of people have put faith that, okay, let's continue to see these dividends that we're already seeing from this administration. Beyond that, APC did a lot of sensitization before the elections. You know, and knowing that even the incumbent governor contested for presidency, you know, and the people supported him, gives you some sense that, oh, look, we couldn't win the presidential primaries, but we have someone who can continue in his legacy in our state. I think that is what worked for APC.
Okay, so now going forward, what do you think would be the you know, like maybe the pendulum between you know, this issue of maybe opposition, like the PDP now as it is, and also because a lot of people have said that PDP has not acquitted itself as an opposition party, you know. So would you think that maybe this thing will continue to play itself if the PDP has not you know, stood you know, stand up to its duty as a main opposition party?
So I would rather not consider PDP as an opposition party because there are no clear-cut ideologies between the different parties. It is until there are those clear-cut ideologies that people stand for firmly that you can consider them to be in opposition, because you will see the difference in their ideology. So let's take, for instance, that the APC has a particular approach to governance, and PDP has its unique approach to governance. If APC comes and PDP insists on their style of governance, you could see that clear-cut opposition to their style. But we see the same elements who move from APC to PDP without any specific interests, apart from the fact that they want to have access to power. You know, so power for the sake of power, not because they are promoting a certain ideology. So in that instance, you can never really have a strong opposition, as it were, because what is just playing out is interest. How do we grab power? How do we grab power? You know, so I used to say something that a particular politician, very popular politician in Nigeria, said on national TV that, oh yeah, I'm in the opposition, and what we do in the opposition is to oppose. You know, so oppose things. And I was asking, you oppose just for opposing sake? He said, yes, because I'm in the opposition, we oppose. So you don't see people supporting things that are in our interest, so to speak, because, oh, they just want to take that partisan position. So until there are clear-cut ideologies, the idea of opposition in Nigeria will not be properly felt. And that is why PDP is where it is today.
Okay, well, with that, I think we've come to the end of this discussion. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Member Technical Network and Advocacy Group, Lux Terra Leadership Foundation, Mr. Henry Ijoma. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We hope to have you another time.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
All right, with this, we've come to the end of Daybreak on Trust TV. Thank you for tuning in. Do not forget, you can also, catch up with us on our social media platforms. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman. Have a fantastic week.
Thank you for staying with us. I am Abdulaziz. Have a good day.